Ladies and gentlemen, it's our proud privilege to welcome Mr. Richard Lobo as a keynote speaker this morning. I think Mr. Lobo needs no introduction to professionals from the HR community who are here with us today. Mr. Lobo has over 2 decades of experience leading the transformation of the people function across organizations. Prior to joining Tech Mahindra, he was the Executive Vice President and HR Head of Infosys. He has also served as a director on the boards of Infosys Consulting and Infosys China. So he brings in a lot of diverse experience on the table. Mr. Lobo is also a strategic advisor to the startup ecosystem and works with industry bodies such as CII and NASSCOM in furthering industry government partnership through human resources centered initiatives. I would also like to add that he has been working on a book. While a lot of us had been busy with our own daily chores, he has completed a book and it's going to be published by Penguin India this September, and it is going to be titled Human at Work. So that's a breaking news for today. So all the best to you, sir. And now over to you, Mr. Lobo, for your keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. You always have to trust a journalist will bring out something which was not part of the session. So I was just having a chat with Arun, and this came out, and he said he'll mention it. So yeah, and also the title is connected to what I have been writing about. But today I thought I will talk about what I have been thinking for a while, and something which we have been experimenting, which is called scaling at speed. But I'm not going to have a very long conversation. It's a very small, intimate audience. So I'll probably have some brief comments, after which we will have a discussion. And I think the session will get that much more richer through the wisdom of everybody in this room. While the title of the talk is Scaling at Speed, it doesn't work in Bangalore actually, because in Bangalore, you see the scale, right? But you don't see the speed. Yeah, all of us faced it this morning and every morning. And jokes apart, I think the same thing happens when you look at the business space around us. We all want to move faster. We want to do more things. But it's very difficult to get both these things aligned. So it is getting the scale right and getting the speed right is where the real challenge is. Most companies, most people are able to do one, but it's very difficult to get both done at the same time. And that's really what I wanted to place before you. Because what is going on, and when you see the growth, and many of this is specific to what is happening in India today, and at no time, and probably when in another few years, 2047, when we do 100 years of the independence, the business scene in India would have changed quite dramatically. And we are probably at a great time and very well placed to take advantage of various things which are happening. We have an abundant talent supply. We have investments in core business which have been done many years ago and has evolved. We definitely took a lead in the IT space, and then today India probably has more companies in the emerging technologies than anywhere else in the world. And the demographics of the workforce, where we probably will have the youngest working age population out of any country, are all stated to enable us to scale. The question now comes about speed. And can we do it at the speed which makes sense for us to be a developed nation in 2047, and that's really the challenge which we have. Sorry. And much of that has to do is how we make use of the human capital which we have, and how do we enable it for the future. Now, when you look at the scaling of businesses, talent plays a very important role in it, because finally it's the people who make a difference. So anybody who set up a great company, who set up a great business, has driven it on the strength of its manpower. And each one of you, I'm sure handling the human resources function in respective companies, face this challenge because you will have someone you have invested in, built on and held your hopes, but they decided to move on and do other things. And it never keeps up with what you want to achieve because it always seems to be that there is a gap there, a barrier, which prevents this scaling up at speed to happen. So how do we invest in people and processes which will really last companies for a long term? And I wanted to leave behind with you just three critical areas, not to overcomplicate the thought process. The first one, I talk about making our workplaces more human. And I think anybody who has dealt with the HR space would have realized that increasingly as things change and as businesses change, workplaces are becoming less human. They're becoming more process driven. They're becoming more automatic. You come in and you go out, nobody really cares. That whole human touch of the workplace that a manager invested time in building up someone's career. Somebody spent time in addressing some difficult situation somebody faces. Even how we treat employees beyond just having a swipe badge or something like that. So the whole concept of how human is our workplace. And during the period when all of us shut down our offices and we worked from home, the companies who did better than others were the people who invested and dealt with the human at work. So people who had the connections, people who had invested time and money in building those networks, people who had the connect could do better than companies who did not. And now when we go back to workplaces, uh, just ask for yourself in your workplace, how much time and investment are we building in redeveloping those connections, redeveloping those networks? Because today, when you see everybody is talking about return to work without figuring out why you need to return to work. Do you need to return to work just because we want to feel comfortable that, okay, if you see people around us, we know they are working? Versus, are we investing that time and effort in rebuilding those connections, rebuilding those shared humanity which we had before we went out of office? So this is the first concept, the investment and the time and effort we need to spend on the human at work. The second one is intelligent use of data and technology. More than any time else, we have a huge amount of data, and especially anybody working in the HR space would know the kind of data available, the kind of information available. You can do two things with it. You can, of course, have it, and each parts of the data doesn't necessarily talk to each other. But if you use it intelligently and using the processing and the technology we have, we can get a far amount of inferences. Like, for example, I'm just giving an example because from the HR space, take a leave application. If somebody applies for paternity or maternity leave, most companies will not do anything beyond the leave getting approved. But there is so much inference. The manager can know that something is going to happen, which is a joyous occasion, and they can congratulate somebody well in advance. You could make some other facilities like insurance cover, or for example, post the baby being born, have some other facility. So there's a lot of data, but the problem is that this is not talking to each other. So intelligent usage of, and I just give you an example, there are multiple other examples which you can think of. But by intelligent usage of data and technology, I think we can make our workplaces and the employee experience much better. And when I speak about experience, think of yourself as a consumer. You go to a shop or for example, if you're walking around a mall, most of the shops there would send you a message on your phone, why don't you come in and shop with us? But the same experience, or for example, after your shopping, you would get an saying, how was your experience? How can we do better? But when it comes to the employee experience, we don't seem to invest that much time and effort into gaining the experience. So if we spend time and effort in getting experiences better through intelligent usage of data and technology, we'll make our our workplace that much better. And the last concept which I wanted to bring to your attention is micro changes. Most of our companies today are very large. They become very big. And whenever we are faced with any HR issue, and I've faced this almost most of my working life, is how do you make it happen through the organization, the scale problem which I talked about in the beginning. But by using this concept of micro changes, we don't necessarily have to worry about changing things in the larger context. Make the change happen wherever it matters. If you make change happen wherever it matters, you can solve the larger equation of it having in place for the uh, company instead of worrying about, okay, how do I make this work in 100,000 organizations? How do I make this work in a 200,000 organization and so on. So when we there are, of course, other challenges, but these are the three concepts I wanted to place before you. The first is human at work and making our workplaces more human. The second is intelligent usage of data and technology. And finally, micro changes to make it work for the company and largely spread it across the enterprise. Of course, we have to be conscious of the fact that this will come with challenges. It's not the future of work or scaling at speed is not necessarily going to be easy. The challenges would include that we will at times overstretch our day-to-day work because many of you might be thinking, okay, all this is all fine, but how do I ensure the day-to-day work happens? How do I get work happening? So again, investment in technology, because I think over the next 10 years or so, we'll see much of the routine things which we do in HR will largely be automated, and that frees all of us up to do some of those things I spoke about. Secondly, of course, all of us are the voice of the people, right? Because if we do not necessarily hold up for people, necessarily talk or take the perspective of employees, the perspective of the human at our work, we necessarily won't be doing justice for our jobs, because while businesses run what they need to do, I think it is the HR professional's job to take the perspective and do the right things for the employee. The larger piece which I wanted to leave before I throw it open for discussion and question is like, while we scale at speed and while we do many of these things, we have to be conscious that we do this in a right way. And when businesses in a country and companies scale at speed, and I've seen some of these examples, and you would have seen many of these examples, we don't necessarily do it in a right way. And many times, there is a very large responsibility on each of us to ensure that whatever we do is done in a way that doesn't damage the enterprise or impacts its sustainability. So I'm referring to the kind of possibilities of people bypassing regulations, people bypassing laid down guidelines, and then ending up with putting companies into trouble. So I think when companies scale at speed, and many companies who have scaled at speed have seen these issues, that if you do not have the right mechanisms in place, your whole journey of scaling at speed comes to a very, very abrupt halt. So our investments in what we will do will largely shape, I think, the business enterprise of this country for the next few years. And I think we are well on our path to becoming one of the best sources of manpower, the best source of technical talent, the best source of innovation and new things for the world. And the beauty is that even beyond this country, no matter which company you go, in many other countries, you will find people who began their career or studied in this country doing well. I was going through the magazine which each of you has, and if you look at the top colleges there, you will find that people who studied in these places are making an impact much beyond this country. And I think that is really the value India has given to the larger world. If you go back 200 years, those of you who are familiar with history would have read that much of what happened in Europe, in the UK, etc., happened because of what India gave in terms of its resources, of natural resources, timber and other kinds of wealth. And whether we agree or have a point of view, I think it fueled much of what happened in the world. For example, the development of the textile industry, the development of shipbuilding industry, the fact that many wars happened on the back of the resources which came out of this part of the world. And I think we are at a very different point of our journey. I think much of what will happen in the future of the world will come from the resources this country gives, and those will be the people resources. So I think each one of us has a very large responsibility to see that we do the best. It doesn't matter which company we work for or which organization we associate with. because it's the collective work we do as people, guardians, that will make an impact for the larger world. And then people will go back as that we did the right thing many years back, and that's why where we are today. So I will close my opening comments. Of course, I think, and we will have a discussion. And of course, there are very few of us, so we'll have an open discussion also. And I'll throw it open to all your observation and questions, so that we have enough time. And this is a productive morning, well worth the time we spent in the traffic. Thank you.
So, Mr. Lobo, you have made some very, very interesting remarks, and you have structured it in such a way, I think it almost prompts us to read your book, upcoming book, because because it had a good structure to it, and I'm very happy that you did not lose yourself in some conversation, but you kept the better part for the Q&A. You mentioned about speed, and this is such an important thing. I mean, we just compared ourselves, or rather we related to the speed of the vehicles on the road just outside, and most of us have got caught in it. And this happens in most of our cities and metros. But apart from the fact that we are all getting late to work, it's actually taking a toll on businesses in a different way. In fact, a friend of mine was here yesterday, and he's an entrepreneur. He was telling me how instead of sourcing inputs from Karnataka or even from Tamil Nadu, he is willing to get his inputs from Mumbai, for instance, because he gets it quickly, although the distance is, much, much bigger. He is also willing to place an order to Baddi, in Himachal Pradesh, because he gets qualitative products at a speed which is much faster. So, speed is of such essence, and you have highlighted it, really well. If you can just let us know, as far as the HR function is concerned, how do you align, the people with the various processes within an organization and without? Because much of your actions also depends today on, how your suppliers react to what you want, etc., etc. So, how do you align the various, put various pieces within an organization together so that you can ensure the speed that you want is also delivered at the end of the day, with all the parties concerned?
So thanks, MG. That's a very good question. And I'm again throwing it for any thoughts you might have. This is just some concepts which I want to place before you. I don't necessarily have answers to all your questions. But let's look at what I would loosely term as friction to business. And one of the things, and I'm specifically speaking about HR as such, and not about the procurement function or the finance function. I think on one hand, we are having at our disposal or for our use, technology which speeds up many things we do. Like, for example, anybody who has used an Copilot feature on your machine or used ChatGPT, etc., knows that we can use the ability of technology to speed up many things we do. Like, for example, if you want to have an interactive solution, you don't necessarily need to speak to a human anymore. Even in HR, you could, the bot could do this quite efficiently. But we have brought in other areas of friction which negate the use of this technology. Just like it is the classic example, and I'm sorry for again going back to the road. I do spend a lot of time on the road, by the way. So you have a car which is capable of going at 150 or something, but you are stuck at 5. And that's exactly, take the same logic to business processes, right? How we design the process is what causes this friction. And that is where human intelligence comes in. Because designing of the process is with us. Technology can only do that much, because if there is no space, your car just can't go. And that's the same thing which happens. And today we are dealing with this dichotomy, is that many of our processes are some 20, 30 years old in the past, and we hang on to them because for various reasons. We fall in love with certain things we do, and we don't want to let go. And that's natural human tendency. It's nothing to do with any company. And many people have made a career of themselves doing this job, and you would have encountered it in your whole, in your organization also. The question also, if I do this better than will I have a job tomorrow? So some of these frictions, I think people create. Some of these frictions happen because of bad designs. Like for example, some of these things might have been done when technology like a fax machine was in operation. It doesn't mean we have to do a repeat of the same thing when a different technology is available. For example, I mean, all of us use email, right? And have you ever thought of those letters called CC and BCC? Has anybody figured that out? The BC was, I mean, some of us, yeah. It was for the carbon copy. And the BCC was, you wanted to sneak off a copy which goes to somebody you don't want it, reading it kind of thing. But we've duplicated. But we have figured, do we need to replicate the carbon business so many years later when there are other better technologies to message people much faster? No, because we still would want to like to, how many times have we told, send me an email, so I'll keep a record, and if something goes wrong tomorrow, I'll pull it up and say, okay, I told you. So I think we have to now rethink, and that's to do with our intelligence, our capacity of imagining things differently. And the only way to go forward is to break some of these things, right? If you don't consciously break, we don't move forward. There's no particular thing, but I think this is something which we need to look at various things we do and see how we can do it differently.
Talking about, age-old processes which we refuse to change, there was this WhatsApp thing that went around the other day where a Zomato delivery person called up a public sector bank and said that, I want to come. Then this person said, because he wanted to deliver lunch, this person said, no, we are having lunch, you come later, So it is very difficult to change some of these age-old habits. I'm sure, we'll have some questions from the audience who have been listening very keenly to, and I could see a lot of you writing down notes.
Richard, you mentioned about this whole point about making workplaces human. But, there's also this whole point, and you mentioned that businesses today are also becoming more process-driven. Like, for example, earlier, we would have our own personalized workstations that we would decorate with family photos and, like other stuff and art. But now, today, a lot of times you have to book your space if you're going to office, right? So, I mean, this is just one example, but there are many more. Teams are today not in office together a lot of times. So, how does this whole, the way to make, these human connections, how is this changing now in today's context?
No, Sonal, I think that's a great observation, and I think thanks for pointing that out. I don't think no matter how much technology changes and how much companies might want to save money on making this booking-based thing, and I'm just extending what Sonal said, I think as humans, we like to have human spaces. And human spaces don't necessarily mean our workstation where we decorate, but human spaces where we can interact, human spaces where we want to spend time together. And office cafeteria was one of those classic areas. And many people used to feel that time gets wasted in this place, but it actually built connects, it built relationships. Or those informal gatherings which many companies had, which was not really planned but happened impromptu because people felt like going for chai together and so on and so forth. I think those 3 years where we went away from our workspaces brought away a lot of habits, took away a lot of habits which we had formed. And many people do not know how to rebuild it. I was interacting with a group of people who had joined us fresh, and they had not, some part of their college life was spent at home and some part of their work life. They joined organizations from remote. And this, I don't want to name the institute, but this girl had come to meet me, and a couple of students had come. One of them was a girl who told me that I used to work for your organization, but this is the first time I'm entering the organization, because those 3 years I spent over my laptop. And I think that has brought in some of the things which we're seeing, this fast turnover, people not having any connect. And we always give this example that people left because the company Y paid more money. people never ever left because company Y paid more money. People always left because they lost the connection. They lost the connection to the manager. They lost the connection to the workplace. And we have to build it back. And I think that's one of the key areas I wanted to talk in that first part when I spoke about the human at work. We have to rebuild those places, reward people who are doing it better. There are managers who will do it better. There are managers who don't. You have to reward teams who do better. And no matter what they do, it really doesn't matter what is the initiative they do. I think it's up to us to recognize it and encourage more of it to happening. Because that is really the key to being efficient in productivity, because some of the best innovations, some of the best ideas came out of garages. They didn't come out of formal offices. They didn't come out of fancy places. They came out of people's garages, and people worked together many times. And most of you would have read stories of companies who later on became very successful. They started in a very odd fashion, and you'll wonder why people ever wanted to work there. Just to add to that, when I interact with people from the startup world, I can exactly see what they are trying to do, because most of the times their salaries, what they take home, etc., is too insignificant to figure out why they're putting that kind of effort. But there is a larger purpose. There is a reason why they're doing it. They like working together. They believe that they're doing something to solve larger issues, and that's what keeps them going. For the duration they're doing that work. So thanks, all.
In fact, that's an interesting point that you've raised. I wanted to ask you, how different is it working with startups, the kind of challenges that you have in startup companies compared to a very established enterprise such as yours? What are the new expectations of different startups, the workforce, how grossly different it is?
I don't claim to be an expert on, because I've not directly worked, but I've just worked with them. But I think a few things. One is they have this immense capacity to believe in themselves, that the confidence that, look, I can make a difference. Many people who worked in the organized world, we wait for our monthly paycheck. We are not able to reconcile to the fact there may not be a monthly paycheck. So I think that belief in myself that, look, if this doesn't work out, I can step out and do something else. I think that is the biggest thing. Second is I found them that their ability to to accept, or it's not really risk, it's the fact that if this didn't work out, I will try something else. Many times there is no reason why something should work, but they're willing to accept failure and move on. And most of these, if you look at 100 startups, probably 95 or something won't work. The chance of success is that low. And I think 5 itself is a very large number. So they're willing to take that ability of failure. And I think the last one is, I think, more than any time else in the past, I think the ecosystem of India today gives them that confidence, because there is enough demand for talent. So if you are good, I don't think companies really view this as a problem. So they know that, for example, when I started my career, getting a job was a very big thing. It's not, that kind of fear doesn't exist. I think these 3 things put together has made all this possible. And I really hope more happens. There is more investment and more encouragement, because I think there's a lot of potential.
That's a great point. I mean, when you talked about failure, we have heard a lot about people telling us we need to have a system which encourages somebody to fail. I mean, this is something that can look quite ridiculous to old timers, but I think that's the truth. When we did a cover story on one of the startups sort of in trouble. And I spoke to an employee. He said, okay, I'll talk to you, but you should not name me. But I asked him, why are you still continuing? Because he had so many credentials, he could have easily moved out of that troubled startup. He told me, but where will I learn such a crisis, how to go through a crisis? So, I mean, this is the best learning point for me, and that's why I'm here. Similarly, another HR professional from the urban company that's a startup. She was telling me that, I asked her, what is the criteria of the people that you take? She said, it's very difficult to get us people. I said, why? I mean, your expectations are so high. She said, we don't get people who have failed enough, So we are looking for people who have failed in the end, either their own or maybe some other company. So I think that is becoming the norm, and I think it's great that you brought in that point, and we have seen some very, very high-profile failures, but I think all these are stepping stones, I'm sure, to a better tomorrow. We have a question there from the gentleman here in the front. Can you Or even the lady, she has got the mic. Please.
So,
Yeah, please
yeah,
introduce
great,
yourself.
I'm Varsha Agrawal, and I am Varsha Agrawal. My question is on the scaling. So, sir, you mentioned that scaling at speed is required, but scaling at speed definitely requires right skill set. However, and the right human capital. But yeah, what we are seeing these days is a lot of people are unhappy with the job, what they are doing. A lot of, almost, 70 to 80% various surveys says that the people are not happy at their job. Do you think skill-based hiring and skill-centric hiring, where the people with the right skills are mapped to the job roles, are going to solve this particular problem? And few companies actually have taken the step to do skill-centric hiring, moving away from degree-centric. Almost 4x times it has happened, but it's mostly happening on JD. But when it comes to actual hiring, it's hardly 1 in 700. How do you think, how far are we from skill-centric hiring, and if it helps in scaling at speed?
So thanks, Varsha. It'll require a very long answer because you brought in so many points. Okay, so stop me when it goes beyond the time. Okay.
No problem, please. You have time.
So I think, see, let's take three parts. I'm going to give three answers to your question. The first part is on skilling per se, which was the main focus, and I think skilling and ability of companies to find the level of competency will be enabled through technology. I think technology will solve that problem, that I could test a person using various tools and figure out that they could do this job, and how they perform on the job, you could decide what is their level of performance and should we invest more in skilling this person. So I think companies shifting to a skill-based hiring model is the easier problem to solve, because technology will kind of substitute, because there is more data available. You know, somebody worked well, people will be willing to share their what they did, etc. So that I think is the easier setup in terms of the scaling of the skill part. The second part is our own mindset, because many people I work with figure that once they get out of college or their formal education, the learning stops. And this concept of lifelong learning, because we are seeing changes in whatever we do, technology or anything else we do, roughly having a shelf life of 5 to 6 years, and after that it becomes obsolete. And whether we are willing to invest, because many times, and that ties to your last question, why people are unhappy, and many times I get people who are unhappy because we hired somebody else who came fresh out of college. I have spent my 5 years, but you spent your 5 years and you didn't learn anything new, so why will you not hire that person who seems to know better skills? So I think there are some people, of course, who get it. I'm not making a generalization that everybody doesn't invest their time, but the fact that our learning should not stop is a very difficult thing to develop. And you have to keep pushing yourself to say, are you today at a skill level which you can be replaced by somebody coming out of college, and the person coming out of college will obviously be cheaper. And that lends to a lot of unhappiness. And most of our unhappiness, look, I'm not an expert on happiness or unhappiness, but the fact is it's the comparison, right? You hired this person who's not as good as me, but you're paying that person more. Most of the time, this is the question, right? Or you promoted somebody, but he's absolutely useless, why not me? But the fact is, we don't spend enough time looking inward, saying, what have I done? What have I done to keep myself ready? That they're willing to invest. And you see, many people in the front end don't have this issue. It's many people who don't, like people who have to do something and demonstrate, don't have this question. Like, for example, a doctor in the medical profession doesn't really have this issue, because you have to demonstrate your skill every day. But many times in companies, you don't have to do it, so you get away with, okay, we think experience substitutes for skills, which it did for a long time, but it no longer is true. So long answer to your question, but I think it was an interesting question.
Yeah, we had another question here from the gentleman here. Yeah. Can you please pass on the mic?
Hi, my name is Narayan. I am from Triotry Technology. I manage operations and marketing. Just to give a perspective here, one side the business leaders are comfortable with reduced budget on office space and people engagement and expenditure on the HR side of it, and other side, the current generation mindset is they are more digital in nature in terms of their interaction priorities. So they are comfortable not to go office but still contribute to the work and get away on their daily basis because their shelf life is not probably aligned with the long-term vision of an organization. So if you compare these two, reduce budget and the mindset, it's mapping there and business goes on. And we as a generation want that to be filled with more human at work just to as a concept. I tried with my own daughter and she is getting frustrated even 2 days to go to office because of the traffic speed and whatever issues are there. But that mindset of how do we solve with, is there any initiative where we can slightly increase the budget and reduce the frustration of younger generation because they are not exposed to all these young employee engagement initiatives and satisfaction at work, etc. Because I believe their expectation time, turnaround time is very little compared to our patience level of our career where we used to wait for years together for promotion, etc. Right? So it's just a thought. I mean,
No, I think it's a good observation. So there are three kinds of why you should go to work, right? The first kind is, of course, I'm the boss, so you have to come and I have to see you. So that's the first approach many companies are taking. Somewhere it works. The second approach is I will give you a lot of chai samosa and you come and you enjoy yourself, so that's why you should come to. So they come during that time and then they don't come on the other days. The third one, and I think the third one is alluding to what you said, and I think is the most interesting one, is why do you need to come? And I don't think we spend time answering what do you gain by coming here. And we have not, as HR, we have not been, HR and as business, we have not been able to explain to people why you need to come here. That there is a these are the things you will build, which you cannot do if you don't come. And there are other days you don't need to come. But if you want to develop yourself, you need to do this. And that is the only available by coming to office, because I can't substitute an interaction on Zoom or anything else. And I think we don't spend enough time on the last part of that problem, because many times we take the first two solutions because those are the easy solutions. And many times, sometimes they work, initially they will work. The other aspect, and I'm just thinking of my experience in my former companies, I think when you build a company that lasts, the leaders have to believe in something which is long term. You cannot build great companies by looking at the short term. And that long term requires investment in people. Like for example, whether it's in a training facility, whether it's in technology. So I think leaders have to have that vision that I'm building a company that will last for the long term. And there are many companies you can get away by taking this short-term perspective, and people do, because you have to give the quarterly results, you have to meet the numbers. But if you look at any company in India which has lasted close to 50 plus or 100 years, they've always invested in the future. I don't want to name those companies because you all know them, but I think they did something, their founders did something different. And I think as leaders, we'll have to think, look, there are some things, even if everybody laughs at me, I will still invest in it.
Yeah, we have a question there. The lady at the back.
This is Rashmi Gupta and I'm from Talent Acquisition. However, I have a classic question related to HR business partner. So when you spoke about speed, data management, technology, I could think of the classic example of comparison when we used to have from HR business partner, addressing to employees' grievances and queries through a help desk. When you used to have a manual person sitting there, right, on a call. Now we transformed across organizations and we have a ticketing system, maintaining speed of answering the TAT and your quality of response or your speed, anything, or data management. But I still hear often from employees during the surveys that they would expect a physical person actually picking the call and answering them with respect to insurance or any other grievances. So I would want to hear from you and probably all of us some kind of a tips, or an advice for such organization in HR. How do we maintain the right balance between this technology, data and all, and also keep a human touch for our employees, keeping in, organization's interest? What do you suggest?
No, that's a great question. So, thanks for asking that. And I think, see, the word you used is the right word, the balance. Because I don't think it's either or. And as we go along, as the number of queries, the number of reasons why employee need to interact go up, one is, like for example, let's take for example a bank situation, right? I'm using a different industry. Now there are many things in my bank I don't need to talk to anybody, and I'm perfectly capable of getting it done, and I personally wouldn't prefer to talk to anybody. But when there are certain things, like when you need deep knowledge, you need expertise, you need guidance, which are vague, which there is no clear defined black or white answer, you need to talk to a human. So I think in HR, that whole concept goes to which are those areas that I need to talk to a human, which are the areas I don't, and then efficiently managing time. Because if you start giving a human person for everything, your cost will shoot up. So the ability to distinguish which employee situation requires a person to deal with complexity, and what as humans we deal with complexity better, we deal with fuzzy logic better. Of course, machines are getting there, but they'll take a long time. So there are areas where we need to separate, and that comes out to closely monitoring what is the satisfaction of the users. If a particular system is getting a great deal of satisfaction, then it's better to remain automatic. Someone is not, then those are the ones you need to shift. Just like many companies in the early days of the voice activated call center response used to run it from a different country, but now many companies are running it from their own country, because when you want to talk to somebody, you want it somebody from your town and not somebody sitting 12,000 kilometers away. So that's the same answer to use technology to figure out which is working very well based on feedback and based on interactions, and which needs to answer the fuzzy logic or the vague answer which a human can do. And I think that's the way forward. And balance is the right word. You have to balance the cost versus satisfaction. So thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think, striking the balance, as you said, is going to be really important, and especially with artificial intelligence coming in a big way. I mean, a lot of jobs are being threatened. And there's a point when journalists like ourselves ask, this question, because AI can come up with a lot of interesting stuff. Even it's being discussed in literature, like in poetry or novels, the use of AI, and it's going to impact jobs in a big way. But again, as you said, wherever you need the human interface, it's going to remain, and I hope the HR function, at least some part of it will remain in the human face, and we see better human interaction.
Who wants to read a book which is written by AI?
We'll definitely read one written by you, but not with AI. Exactly. I mean, it could be, but we don't know. I think the machines are also getting more and more intelligent, but I think it will always, in some areas it always require that specific human touch and imagination, which we hope will not be replaced. So thank you so much, Mr. Richard Lobo, for this enlightening session that we have had, and I hope it has been an eye-opener to a lot of us.
Thank you.